Hey everybody, this is Anthony Brogdon coming at you strong. Strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. I've been saying strong for about 15, 20 years now. And so that you're at Strong Inspirations YouTube channel, where I do my best, and it's not hard to do because it's out there, find some people who know some Black history stories from across the gambit. I got one today that's gonna blow your mind. It blew my mind. And you might not have heard, there was a Black guy in the early 1900s who had a car manufacturing company. And they're gonna tell you the story. He was competing against Ford in some respects. Unbelievable. Check it out. You know, I write this book. It's called Black Business Book. It's over 200 facts on Black history with an emphasis on the rise of Black business in America. And the story that we're going to tell you today is a fact in my book. I found out it just because I did a little research. I posted about this fact in some Facebook groups, and lo and behold, Stephanie said, "Hey, that's my great-great-grandfather." Oh my God. Funny how God works. Subscribe to this channel, please. It don't cost nothing. So you can keep getting this content. Hit the like button. Tell us that you like it. Give us some comments. I'm open for whatever's gonna make it better. And people that you suggest that we should interview. Hit the notifications button so you know I got new content coming up, which I do 3 or 4 a week, and tell somebody. And so I want to introduce our guests. I don't do the introductions because I don't want to talk too much. I let them introduce themselves, and then we're going to go right into the story. So go ahead.
I'm Suzanne Patterson Jones. I am one of the direct descendants of Charles Richard Patterson, better known as C.R. Patterson, of the Greenfield, Ohio, which is in the Dayton area of Ohio.
And I'm Stephanie Michelle Patterson. I guess I'm the great-great-granddaughter of C.R. Patterson and proud to be part of the Patterson heritage, I'll say that.
The Patterson heritage, okay, you told us a bit about, and I said something about your great-great-great-grandfather who had a car manufacturing company. I guess my first question is, how did you find out that he had this and who he was and what he had done?
Okay. Well, when I was 11 or so, I'm dating myself, there was a Category 5 tornado in Xenia, Ohio, where our family land is now and where we had a home. Our grandparents lived there. And after that tornado, being the respectful child I was, my brother and I, along with my dad, Stephanie was a little too young, put on our boots and went down to Xenia, because we lived in Columbus, to clean up after the tornado. And we were taking out artifacts. There were family Bibles, newspaper clippings. I have obituaries from the early 1900s, and they were all our family members. And it talked about them having this manufacturing company that started with buggies right after the Civil War. And in 1916, in fact, September 16th, 1916, their first car rolled off the assembly line. And I had heard of it before, but I did not know the gravity of it until that day in April.
How did you find out, Stephanie?
I'll say I found out through, family dinners, Sunday dinners, passing on general conversation with my father, his sister, his brother, the whole extended family. And of course, there's a couple of artifacts that are around, at that time were around my parents' house. And it was part of just kind of educating us. And I really didn't take ownership to, wow, I'm a descendant of C.R. Patterson until I got a little bit earlier to really kind of appreciate our history and our heritage. But it's part of who we are. And so I'm glad I had the parents that could share that story with us, as well as a great aunt that was living up to a couple of years ago that was able to kind of reflect on when she worked there, when she was married to Postel Patterson.
Okay, your great aunt worked at the company?
Yes,
Hmm.
when she was little. Now, today she would be a little over 100, but yes, because remember the first car rolled off the assembly line in 1916, even though the company started in the 1800s. And they went from manufacturing these motorized buggies or custom built cars that you could pre-order with whatever you wanted to, so you could get that real leather seat, to switching, because they couldn't get capital, to making the chassis for buses and funeral cars and what they had as doctors' wagons.
Okay.
So she worked on that aspect when she was younger.
Wow. So let me get this straight. So first there was horse-drawn carriages.
Yes, but yes.
That's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Built some carriages, didn't he?
Right. So C.R. Patterson was a blacksmith by trade.
All right.
And there's a lot of unknown whether he fled slavery. He was definitely married in a marriage ceremony, true with the marriage certificate. So he was not a slave in 1863. So we actually, it's unwritten, undocumented. Then he had a Patterson buggies, and then it changed to Patterson and Son, or Patterson Greenfield and Son company. So he had sons and daughters. He had a lot of children, and he made these buggies. The most popular was it looks like a hearse, but it's a wagon for a doctor, so they could carry buggies. I guess that would be like an EMT wagon today. And he made buses that carried many people, but they were for horses to carry.
Okay, okay, I got you.
Yeah, then you got it. So then he sent, yeah, that was first, because we didn't have that engine. But as we got into the motorized era, his son, Frederick Patterson, joined him, Frederick Douglass Patterson. And Frederick bought, made this company then produce motorized cars. And these motorized vehicles were handmade. And they continued, but he could never get the funding because of, the big boys in Detroit blocked him from that funding to be able to update. He had employed people, about 50 people. They handmade these cars. They made them to your direct order. So they could not, with that mass production of the Model T, there was no competition and there was no money. So then they went to making the chassis of buses, and that continued for as long almost to the time that Frederick Douglass passed.
Do you all know if he was educated? Did he?
Well, CR, we don't know, but CR did send his children to school. So he sent Frederick Douglass to Ohio State. He was actually, one of the first Black men at Ohio State University. He went for 2 years. Then he came home. Then Frederick sent our grandfather, who is Frederick Postel, to Ohio State University. He too went for 2 years and ended up having to come home because his father was sick. And then my grandfather, of course, sent all 3 of his children. They went to Central State University in Ohio. But my dad did teach at Ohio State University. My sister and I, so the one thing CR instilled is that you go to college. So everyone in our generation finished a 4-year university. Stephanie attending HBCU. I went to Howard, only for a year, but I did go to Howard as an exchange student. And I'm proud to say that my son is a sophomore at Ohio State University.
Oh, now is this part in Ohio, is that free land? Or is that slave? Or did Charles was he a slave and then fled?
We don't know. That's the part that we really don't know. And Charles had other children where some of them moved to Minnesota, and thanks to online ancestry forms, we have connected and we're trying to piece together those stories. So we really don't know. That part is unknown. I did know that he and his brother bought their parents out of slavery.
But the land that they did have their home and the
Area of Ohio.
manufacturing place was not too far from the underground, one of the underground railroad stops. So you figure, I mean, well, that part of Ohio was a little bit northern, where I think that was probably free land.
Because Ohio, I think is maybe, especially I know Cincinnati is kind of where it becomes free. Once you get past that river,
Right,
Right.
coming out of Kentucky, you that's the free land.
right,
the free
exactly.
I'm a business owner myself, so I know that you have to have some money to get your materials.
Mm-hmm.
You had to go out and get the materials from the white people.
If you were to read one of the obituaries for either CR or Frederick Douglass, you would realize that they were very respected by both the Black and the white community. Within Greenfield, Ohio, they had a lot of respect. In fact, both of their obituaries have what we would call euphemisms. They were good people. They were outstanding citizens. And I reread my great-grandfather's obituary a few years ago, and he was pictured as that perfect Black person. And I thought, wow, there's a lot of euphemisms in here. And so I think it was easier for him, just like we see today, for certain people to get money than it is for other people to attain money. But the big money he was never able to attain. They owned their manufacturing building for a very long time. But, after, as they put, the roaring 20s and the Depression, that no longer held true for
Right.
us.
What?
So I choose to believe, and I want to make sure,
Yeah.
I choose to believe that yes, they were honored and respected, the Patterson family, but I don't want to come out with the perception that they were so-called house, that I think they were respected because they were honest and trustworthy people. And Greenfield, to this day, that area, the Historic Society still honors the Patterson family, and
Oh,
the
really?
Pattersons have done with the automotive industry as well as education. So, you know, I wish I knew more of the story of how his character was,
Yeah.
but my per se is that he was an outstanding person of color. And from what has been passed down to us, I believe that it's still standing proud as an African American or a Black man or a Negro, whatever they wanted to call us back then.
Now, we all started out in the South, so all Black people. Do you know where in the South that it all began for the Pattersons?
Virginia.
Also,
Virginia and Kentucky, from what I can see. Virginia and
okay.
Kentucky.
And so somehow he got to small town outside of Xena and Dayton to be Greenfield.
Right, to Greenfield, Ohio, yes. And people knew that at that time, with the unrest, that slaves that worked, such as a trade like a blacksmith, could buy their freedom at times.
Let me stop you there. What is a blacksmith?
A blacksmith is someone who worked with metal and tools. We still have blacksmiths today. It's a good thing I teach third grade. A blacksmith made tools. So if you needed a tire iron, I guess for that time, they would form it and fit it, or the ironwork that you have, or the horse's hooves. They made those things out of iron and steel. They bent them and formed them into what you wanted.
Let me ask you this now. Who made cars for him to know what a car could look like? Was there somebody before them and then they came up with their own style? What's the evolution of cars and that you know?
They made the buggies, and the buggies were known to be high quality, good quality. So you weren't going to get a lot of rust. They also had style and form and function. So if you look at that time period, your bread was delivered in a truck, a horse-drawn truck, your ice, your hearse. We still see in Louisiana that they practice with a horse-drawn buggy in funerals. So, and then transportation, that was a way that you had to sit comfortably. So that buggy, or that structure for that buggy, was what our mode of transportation. So it was just actually doing that. I do have one of the first, and I didn't bring it today. I have some of the first pamphlets when it talks about what the buggy looked like and
Oh man.
how they sold it. So a lot of those things, this is the car, actually, but a lot of these things are, whoops, sorry about that.
Yeah.
A lot of these things were documented. Oh, here it is. So this is a brochure. This is brochure number 20. And, you know, the Pattersons in Boston Black. And it shows the different body styles of buggies according to what your profession was. So if you were a doctor, you wanted something different than maybe the undertaker.
Okay,
So,
I got you.
So they built those buggies. So Frederick went to school, and then he wanted to apply a motor to that, or a steam engine, or how they progressed.
So there were others out there, understandably, making buggies, and then he comes up with, I'm gonna make my own buggy.
Yes, he's gonna provide buggies to the community.
To the community.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he had a showroom or some way for people to find him and then be able to buy him for whatever amount he charged.
Right. Well, it was local. So locally, he produced these buggies and he was very popular. He was actually popular in the South, unbeknownst to a lot of people, but he was popular from Cleveland to New York. It was kind of a travel, but these major metropolitan areas at that time where they used transportation. And so he had to make those buggies. You remember the Amish at that time made buggies, and they're all over that part of Ohio.
Okay, yeah, right. Yeah, the Amish. Yeah, sure. And so he had a sales force?
No, there was only 15 persons. It was by need, just like everything else that you would want, all by need. So as a farmer, if I needed a buggy, you knew who to go to. You knew to go to me.
Wow. And so he, how many cars did he make?
Do you remember, Stephanie? He had 2 models of his car, but he had several models of his buses. Right, but there were over 800 vehicles. But he had many more buses and other carriages than he had cars.
How long did the company exist?
Well, the first car rolled off in 1916, and the company closed down shortly after 1936, sometime within the next few years after 1936, is from what I can tell.
But it actually started in the 1800s with the buggies.
It started in the 1800s with the buggies, yes. This brochure is from 1901.
1901.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where did you find that?
In the basement in my grandmother's house. And this brochure, which is, it's called Patterson Built, and it's a school bus. This is actually from 1926.
Have you all heard of a vehicle still left? Somebody has one?
Supposedly there's, I've heard there's 1 or 2 out there, but we have heard that there is one out there. We don't know where it is, but we've been trying to locate it.
And
how did you hear that though?
Our great aunt.
What did you say?
Our great aunt, because she worked there, she kept in touch with the people that worked there for a very long time. So we know that one was left in someone's family. And that's I think she died in the early 2000s. So we knew up until, the late 1990s that someone out there's family in the Midwest had a car. But the Dayton Historical Society has a park called Carrollton Park, and there is one of the original cars that was refurbished in that park.
Is that right? Is there a monument in Greenfield to the company?
No.
Not a monument, but I hear that they do a parade. I don't know if they still do it, but they used to do a parade it was like an old fashioned, I guess, old time car parade, and Patterson Greenfield was part of that. I know that they do have, their historical society has several write-ups of the Patterson Mobile.
And the cornerstone of the building is still in existence, of the original.
Oh, is that right? of the plant itself where they made them or what have you.
Where they manufacture, yes, it is. It was as of I guess the mid 2000s, like 2010. So not as one of their first initial exhibits.
Sure.
And I don't know if they've contacted anyone since then, but yes.
And so you don't know if there's an exhibit there of any note.
No, we don't know. I believe there's a mention, but I'm not sure that there's an exhibit. So, well, they would have to come because I have a lot of the things and my aunt has a lot of the things.
Yeah, so they would contact you. You alluded to how the competition that they had, and Henry Ford, I guess in particular.
Right.
What is that? What's that competition? Did he?
We weren't raised to dislike anyone, but we were raised to understand that the financial influence that privileged people have, and when you don't want competition, much like a lot of things of that era, you don't loan to people because you've got someone up here with a lot more money that has a little bit more political influence. So that influence of privilege was very much alive then as it is today.
So Henry Ford knew of him.
Oh yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
They say the Model T Ford is based off of the Patterson mobile.
Is that right?
That's supposedly.
The rumor is the design, that there were people that left to go because Henry Ford could pay more. They charged less for a Model T than they did for Patterson because Patterson was custom built, where they had the assembly line. They could roll off more cars in a day than we could probably make in a few months. So all of that competition and the fact that the people that could work for you that knew, they left because we didn't just employ Black people or colored people as they were called at that time. We employed all people.
So he had to make the car. He had to know how a car was made, all the intricacies of a car, whatever they had to do to make an engine.
Well, when you look at the car that they have in Carrollton Park, you really appreciate your car today. I kept thinking, you don't want to, you do not want to be beside a bus in that car. But I guess for the times, it was a well-built car. The metal, of course, was wonderful. The design is beautiful, but I'm not sure that I would take it out on a freeway today.
Yeah. But he had to say, I want my side view mirror to look like this.
Yes.
I want my seats to be this kind of. So he had to do everything to design the car.
Mm-hmm.
It took engineering experience.
Yes, an engineering experience. In fact, our grandfather was a draftsman, and I didn't know what that was when I was little either. But when I think back now, what that meant that he was an engineer that could not get a real engineering job after the company closed.
We talked about this a little bit the last time, and I want to just ask: Did he make money? Did he become?
I think for the times they were doing really well. I think they did really well for what they did. They definitely had. They had photographs taken. People did not have photographs taken at that time, white nor Black. They had china that's been passed down from generations. They had some jewelry that's been passed down from generation to generation.
They own land.
But maybe if they had been given the funding, Stephanie and I would be living a very different life.
Yeah, sure.
But for the time, but they put all of their money into the company and trying to keep the company to survive. Now, when the company dissolved, they were not poor by any means. They were very middle class. And that is contributed not only to the company, but into the belief that the only way to survive in the United States is through education.
And they did give back to actually going into education. They did give back to Central State. I want to say, I know that they supported in many ways, whether it was, Central State was not too far away from where their home is, the Patterson home. So whether it was helping out with feeding people that maybe needed a dinner or making small donations. So they believed in, you support your community, you support those in your network that are around you.
Have you all ever bragged on this story to somebody? Hey, my great grandfather manufactured a car. Do you tell people this story? How do you help get the story out?
I think I lost the job over the story, but I was a principal for a bit, and I remember telling my teachers I did not want to see another picture in February of Martin Luther King, which got a lot of, and I said, because every time we look at Black history, we only concentrate on Rosa Parks or Martin
No
Luther
question.
King.
Yeah.
And I said, I want you to go out there and find Black people with patents, Black people that are engineers and manufacturers. And I don't want to hear anything about a peanut. And I really got a lot of pushback. And, there isn't anybody. So I had to do a presentation, and I showed them, and like the entire faculty was like,
I can't imagine.
I got a lot of pushback from my supervisors because I had done that. Now, I was in a private school system, parochial school system. So I want to say shame on them. But I've been teaching for 31 years. And every year I make sure that my Black history presentation is on my family.
All right.
So I've told the story, and as well, I used to teach. I'm still in education in some form, but when I taught, I actually, during that time, I think Suzanne and I went to Detroit for the African American on Wheels
Right.
convention. And so we were honored there. And then, as well as explaining it, at that time I was teaching 5th grade, to my 5th grade students about not only my history, but having them look into their family history. And then I kind of extended it even more because we met one of 2 of the only NASCAR race car drivers.
Yeah.
Right. And our story not only hits on history, but then you look at the math and science of it, you look at the language of it, you look at the research of it. You have a full-blown lesson plan for a couple of months to engage students, and then trickle down to them telling their own story.
We shouldn't have to change our.
Yeah, I got you.
20 years. So just know who you are.
Stephanie, any closing remarks?
Well, I want to thank you very much for this invitation to attend today and spreading the word about the Patterson heritage.
Stephanie, from the bottom of my heart, I really thank you all for taking time out to come on Strong Inspirations and tell this story. Everybody, I told you it was going to be good.
And,
wasn't joking. Yep, there you go. Look at that.
Patterson built.
Unbelievable. Everybody, again, subscribe to the channel, like this video, hit the notifications, tell somebody, stay strong, stay well, stay focused. Thank you, Patterson sisters. Love you.
Keep voting.
Keep voting. We out.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.